And you're listening to Science Friday. Happy Halloween. On today's podcast, a monster mashup, an ode to three quintessentially creepy creatures: bats, spiders, and snakes.
They're kind of scary too. I mean, I'll grab one because I'm desperate to collect them for our research, but even I am a little bit reluctant.
Starting with a bat tail that will haunt your nightmares, particularly if you are a robin. The greater noctule bat is Europe's largest bat species with a wingspan of about 1.5 feet. And here to tell us more is Dr. Elena Tena, National Coordinator for the Spanish Bat Atlas Project. Elena, welcome to Science Friday, and tell us about this bat.
Thank you very much, Flora. Very nice to be here. I really like that we talk about bats here with Halloween because people associate it right with fear and these kind of things, but they're not dangerous and they're impressive and really exciting. And I think it's very cool to talk today about the greater noctule bat and what it's doing. This is the first time we just recorded how the greater noctule bat capture and eat these birds while they're migrating, and I think the results are really, really impressive.
Okay, let's just take a step back in case people missed it. These are bats that eat migrating birds.
Exactly, like they're mainly insectivores. Here in Spain and in Europe, all the bats we have, they're insectivores. But in the case of...
Hey, it's Flora Lichtman, and you're listening to Science Friday. Today on the show, how tech is changing the way that we grieve.
People move around a whole lot more. It's not everyone who's going to be able to come back to honor someone when they die. And it turns out that when we can't get together in person, well, we get together online.
When we think about getting our affairs in order, there's a well-established playbook: creating a will, naming legal guardians, advance directives for medical care, funeral plans. But increasingly we're faced with another aspect of our legacy to manage, and that is our digital afterlife. How we live on after we die on the internet, on social media, even as AI replicas. And yes, that's more common than you might think. So how should we be making arrangements for our post-life presence? Jed Brubaker has a perspective on this question. He's an information scientist at the University of Colorado Boulder, and he leads the university's Digital Legacy Clinic to help people manage their loved ones' digital affairs. Jed, welcome to Science Friday.
Thanks so much for having me.
I know people have run into this in their own lives, like a Facebook remembrance page or something like that. And what I have heard and experienced myself are sort of mixed emotions, where it's both a little unsettling.
Sure.
To see this person who's gone, but they're still there. And also, like, it can be quite nice and heartwarming and feed you. And I guess I'm curious how you parse those feelings, and how do people generally feel about digital afterlives?
Yeah. I mean, it makes me think about my own relationship to these. I did my master's degree at Georgetown, really focusing on what digital identities and digital lives were like online broadly. I was really interested in like how people like met each other and dated, probably because I was meeting people and dating them, right? But there was this fateful conference I was at 2008, where I ended up sitting with Janet Vertesi. She's a sociology professor at Princeton. We were sitting on the beach, and we turned to each other and we said, "Hey, have you noticed all these dead people on MySpace?" Because we're that old. And right, totally, right? And we both were like, what's up with these dead people? And for me, with a very technology perspective, stepping into this initially, I was like, well, it just felt wrong. These profiles weren't supposed to be there because, well, the people weren't there anymore. And so we decided to start like a little study right at the beginning of my PhD. And it turns out I couldn't have been more wrong. Once we started looking at these profiles, we realized that the real problem would be if someone actually deleted them. All you had to do is look at the messages that people were leaving to loved ones, and the importance that those profiles were playing in their own experiences of, sure, grief early on, but then later maintaining a connection remembering and honoring those relationships. I kind of did a complete 180 within the first couple years of my doctoral work and realized that what we really needed was to figure out how to preserve these spaces when appropriate, and in the long term, really actually help people think about how to plan for what's more than just accounts and data. There are memories.
I mean, have you studied this? Do they bring people solace?
Yeah, so opinions and experiences have changed. So does it bring people solace? The answer is different in 2009 versus 2025. When I first started this work and I was doing a big interview study, I would tell them what I was doing and they have no idea what I was talking about. By the end of my doctoral work, everyone had the experience of an aunt who had died and had a Facebook memorial page. So people's exposure to this has really changed, and exposure seems to be the biggest factor that shapes how people feel about this. If you're just seeing like a notification, and this is not an uncommon experience, a notification that like your uncle who's died is having a birthday and you're being encouraged to go celebrate on his Facebook page or whatever social media platform you're on, that can be unsettling. But people in survey work we've done who benefit from and really appreciate the value of these memorials are people who have actually gone and looked at it and seen the kind of positive ways that it allows people to reconnect. And I guess, if you stop and think about what it's like, in 2025, that's not surprising compared to, let's say, 1950. People move around a whole lot more. We leave our towns to go to college. We go to the big city for that job. This is now sounding like a Hallmark movie. But it's not everyone who's going to be able to come back to honor someone when they die. And it turns out that when we can't get together in person, well, we get together online.
Right. So the grieving rituals that we have are not necessarily made for the lives that we have right now. And so we're creating new grieving rituals, is what it sounds like.
Absolutely.
We asked our listeners to share their stories about how they've navigated, digital legacies of their loved ones. And I wanted to share this one with you.
My name is Allie. I'm calling from Ames, Iowa. So my father passed away right around the time when Facebook was becoming really popular. And I remember my brother and I arguing over who would manage the account because he was a little bit older. And I think that was the part that was really the most difficult. It was an unexpected death, so there was no designated person per se. And social media was new. I think over time, it feels like it's just there, there's not a lot of interactions with it anymore. I think I'm the only one that interacts with the page. I love that there's a chance to honor him, but sometimes it's a reminder, like getting into notifications in the corner of the Facebook, and it'll be like, oh, you haven't posted in a while, or which that's kind of like, oh, well, I don't really need to. Thanks, Facebook, for the reminder.
Jed, any response to that?
Yeah. Well, the two things that stood out to me, first is about, who manages these profiles? And that's a really great question. If her father passed away when Facebook was starting to become popular, that was, unfortunately before Facebook had any kind of robust sets of features. Facebook released Legacy Contact in 2015, which allows you to select a loved one to care for and manage aspects of your online profile after you died. Full disclosure, I was the lead researcher on that project, so I think it's a fantastic product, but I'm biased. So, knowing who is going to manage these things is a little tricky. What we find is that people tend to follow the same practices as you would for your will, and that oftentimes means that you're selecting a spouse, but that maybe isn't always the right choice. Your spouse might not be the most tech-savvy person. It sounds like in this case you had two people who could do it, and that's fantastic. But I'm a big fan of select a tech-savvy cousin who can handle things for you. So yeah, that's
the will executor. That personality type.
Yeah, well, I mean, it can be, but you need that personality type, but also a person who kind of understands the tech space and actually maybe understands the culture too. We sometimes have people who contact us at the clinic who are trying to figure out how to take care of, say, an Instagram account, but they don't actually understand the norms of that platform. It's like having to be the funeral director, but not really knowing what a funeral home is like, right? And so let's find people who can do that in our family. And then if you're stuck, of course, we run this clinic at CU, and we're always willing to help people out as they're working through these issues.
The other thing that Ali talked about was sort of how the page ages. And her message made me think, do we need to plan for the digital afterlife of our digital afterlife?
Oh, absolutely. One of the things I oftentimes tell software engineers when I go and give a talk or I'm working with a group in, say, Silicon Valley is I explain to them that death is not a Boolean. It's not a on or off. You're not alive and then you're dead, because grief is actually quite layered. The experience of our loved ones on day one when we die is very different than a week, month, year, 10 years later. And so it's great that companies are starting to create ways for us to manage our digital legacies, but I think there's a lot of work to be done about how those legacies and what the needs are of our loved ones, like how they evolve over time. There's a lot of work to be done on that front.
Yes. We have to take a break, but don't go away, because when we come back, would you want to be made into an AI chatbot after you die?
There's a thing in our lab we call the Dolly Parton principle. Dolly Parton's made it really clear that no AI should be used to create music, representations of her. We need to let our loved ones know what we're comfortable with and what we're not comfortable with.
Here's another message we got from a listener. This is from Chris in Arkansas.
My sister still uses her husband, who is deceased. She still uses his phone, and every time I call to leave a voicemail, I hear his voice. It's a mix of two worlds. It's like sad that he's gone, but at the same time, it's nice to hear his voice.
I mean, Chris's message really struck me because it feels like this is something kind of special about the digital age, that you don't just have a photo in a photo album. You actually all have this very interactive, three-dimensional, multi-dimensional media, including lots of audio and video of our loved ones.
Yeah. Some of the earliest examples of like a digital afterlife, as it were, are actually of like out of office automatic email responses that like people would use, and maybe they like died while they were on a trip, or that people stepped in and created one to explain that someone had died. And there's lots of anecdotal stories from like, I'm talking like early 90s, like early days of the internet, of people having their first encounter with these kind of ghosts through these automatic responses. And just like the caller, they have that mixed feeling of like, oh, well, that's kind of unexpected because they're never going to come back from that trip to Denmark, but also there's something kind of sweet as a way of connecting. We hear this a lot, starting especially after the 2000s, of people talking about this, of saving voicemails, calling phones, to just hear that person's voice again. And I think it speaks to a broader tendency about how we think about and use technology when it comes to honor and memorialize the dead. You can look throughout time, and we have always used whatever the latest technology is that's available to us to help us commemorate, connect with, and honor our loved ones.
How is AI changing digital afterlives?
Yeah. The honest answer is that we don't really know yet, but that is a really active place that we're working aggressively on. When we think about AI in our lab, we are thinking about the kinds of new forms of interactivity it might bring.
Are you talking about AI chatbots that are sort of replicas of your loved one?
Yeah. So we've been doing work looking at what we call generative ghosts. And so these are systems and sometimes they're just theoretic systems that we're anticipating coming into existence that use generative AI, like say ChatGPT, to capture some aspect of the deceased. And this could be simply like, imagine a wrapper of like a Wikipedia article, something that summarizes like, oh, your grandfather, when he turned 50, here were the 6 things that were really notable about his life then. But this also can turn into characterizations of our deceased loved ones, the ability to have a kind of conversation with them that's interactive.
But this exists, right? Like these simulations exist already in the world.
These simulations exist. There's been a lot of kind of early experiments in this, and none of them are, I think, where we're going to end up in even the next few years. If we think about just the massive amounts of data we're creating, private or not, the opportunity to create, say, using a large language model to simulate a conversation is a very real possibility.
I mean, yeah, we've been following the risks of harm from AI, and including how chatbots can exacerbate mental health challenges. And, you know, grieving is such a profoundly vulnerable time. It feels to me like there's, you know, real potential for risk here. But how would you explain the risk of this?
So I think I step into this space a bit cautiously and with some insights from the past. Many of the concerns I hear around generative ghosts at this moment sound a lot like the concerns people had around, say, Facebook memorial pages, 10 years ago. And I don't say that to dismiss it, but these are scientific research questions. We're doing work right now in the lab looking at different ways of designing these things. Do we have the chatbot talk as if it is your loved one versus about your loved one, to figure out how people feel about it? We're doing work connecting with psychologists who specialize in grief to think about for what populations and in what circumstances do we need to put some constraints around it. As a technologist, I think about this as a set of design challenges, and one that certainly has a lot of weighty obligations behind it. It's really important that we get this right. But again, I want to be careful that we're maximizing the benefits, that like we're letting people have new, interesting, interactive ways of connecting with their family's history because they're doing it anyway, while also making sure that we know where exactly the risks are so that we can design ways to avoid them or minimize them.
What about consent? You know, if you die and you have not given permission to be turned into a chatbot, can you still be turned into a chatbot? And how should we think about that?
Yeah, this is something that we're seeing show up most clearly in like celebrity culture right now and in Hollywood. There's a thing in our lab we call the Dolly Parton principle. Dolly Parton's made it really clear that no AI should be used to create music, representations of her, etc. Like this is like, she's just made what her wishes are extremely clear. And of course, the use of AI was a real big concern in the SAG-AFTRA strikes. And so when we're thinking about creative economies and creative cultures, lots of concerns here. I think the concerns shift a little bit if we're thinking about private families using these things for private use. And so I think it's important to clarify that. But the consent really, for me, comes right back to this issue of ambiguity. We need to let our loved ones know what we're comfortable with and what we're not comfortable with.
In terms of best practices, do you have any advice for listeners around this?
Yeah. I definitely have advice for people when it comes to their end-of-life digital planning. And the first is to have a plan. The interesting contradiction we constantly see in the data is that users, people who own an account, they tend to not actually care too much about what happens. In end-of-life planning, we sometimes talk about this as the double D. People tend to defer, oh, I'll make a plan later, or they delegate. Oh, my kids will figure out what to do with it. And both of these are actually not kindnesses, because the big challenge here is ambiguity. And what we find in the data is that while you might not care, your loved ones actually do a lot. They might not know how they're going to use this data, but they want the option to look at it down the line. Don't fall victim to those two Ds. Don't defer, don't delegate. If it's helpful, think about it as an in case of emergency plan. When I'm talking with younger people, I'm like, oh, imagine that you're like getting a surgery and you need your, significant other to post something on Instagram. Get that set up, right? And that could be as simple as, and I think this is a good minimum, turn to your loved one and say, I don't care what you do. I trust you to make the right choice at the right time. We have worked with so many people who they tear themselves apart because they want to do right by their loved one, but they don't know what to do. At a minimum, tell your loved ones that you trust them to make the best choice. And that's a bare minimum. The next thing I'd encourage people to do, particularly if they use Meta products, Google products, and Apple products, is to go use their end-of-life planning tools. And you can basically set up, they each function a little bit differently. I mentioned earlier about how Facebook allows that legacy contact to manage aspects of their profile. Both Google and Apple will allow a loved one to go download, say, maybe those precious photos. And you know, photos is the number one thing that people are approaching us about. They're no longer on the bookshelf, right? They're in the cloud. Don't let those memories be lost.
Jed, thank you so much for talking to us today. Hey, this is Flora Lichtman, and you're listening to Science Friday. Today on the show,
here's Johnny.
that was from The Shining, of course, and it makes you wonder, why do we want to watch a murderous psychopath try to axe down a bathroom door so he could kill his family? What draws us to horror? And why are some people more thrill-seeking or morbidly curious than others? Here to flesh out some answers are two experts who happen to fall on opposite poles of the horror fandom genre. Dr. Ken Carter is horrified of horror. He's also a psychology professor at Emory University and author of the book Buzz, Inside the Minds of Thrill Seekers, Daredevils, and Adrenaline Junkies. And we have horror-phile Dr. Colton Scribner, a behavioral scientist at Arizona State University and author of the new book, Morbidly Curious, A Scientist Explains Why We Can't Look Away. Ken, Colton, welcome to Science Friday.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
It seems like horror is having a moment right now. Am I imagining that? And if it is having a moment, is there any reason why?
Well, I don't think you're imagining it if you look at the box office share of horror over the past 30 years. And it was around 17%, which is about 2 to 3 times its typical share and is the highest that it's been in recorded history, at least since we've been collecting comprehensive records.
Wow.
Yeah, and so if it's highest at the box office, it's probably also more common on streaming platforms. And if it's more common on streaming platforms and in the box office, you're probably also seeing it in big box stores and other places as well.
Do you have a hypothesis for why that is so?
I do. The short answer, and I actually only came across this idea recently, it got a lot more popular in 2020. So it had about 12% of the box office share in 2020, which was around double what it normally gets. And at the time was the highest that it ever had. And I think what happened was a lot of people started watching horror movies around the time COVID hit. And a lot of those people that started watching horror movies were people who wouldn't normally watch horror movies. And so I think we have a new crop of horror fans that have popped up in the past couple of years, and filmmakers have taken note of that.
Ken, this is kind of counterintuitive to me because, you know, the correlation of the world going through this kind of nightmare scenario and then people wanting more nightmare scenarios in their leisure time, like that seems surprising.
Yeah, where there's a lot of uncertainty. I think people are also often drawn to sort of cathartic experiences. And so, you know, sometimes people say, I just needed a good cry. And so sometimes people just need a good scare, I think, in order to sort of, you know, flush out some of the emotions they may be feeling. Plus, on the screen, there's a lot of clarity about like who's the big bad and who's good and who's bad. And you don't often get that in everyday life.
Colton, if you like horror, does that mean, you know, what personality traits go along with that? Are you less sensitive? Are you lower in empathy?
I think it's intuitive to believe that would be the case. I'm pretty sympathetic to that intuition, you know, that, hey, if you like watching movies that are filled with suffering, maybe you're a little lower in empathy. That's not a bad hypothesis to start with. And it was kind of the default answer for a long time. And I decided, well, I'm a scientist, I'm interested in horror, and I should probably study this because it seems like a lot of people haven't. And when I did that, I found that horror fans score just as high as everyone else in affective empathy, meaning that they feel what other people feel to the same extent higher in cognitive perspective taking another person's perspective.
but has a lot of that stress hormone. So I'm just really frightened, but don't have that sense of enjoyment of high sensation seekers will feel.
You know, listeners, if you want to know your horror tolerance better or your sensation seeking score, we're going to have these self-guided sort of quizzes on our website. So Colton, you have this morbid curiosity quiz, and we're going to put it on our website at sciencefriday.com/morbid. And the questions are sort of like, if a head transplant was possible, I would want to watch the procedure. Highly agree or highly disagree. You know, I'm interested in how Ouija boards work. Highly disagree on the very low end.
Yeah.
Except paranormal, where I was like off the charts. I was like at the very
Really?
highest end. Yeah. So that's
Okay.
that's who I am. How do you score on this, Colton?
I score pretty high, fives probably across the board, and overall.
The top is 6, just so everybody
Top is
knows.
6, yeah. So it's a pretty normally distributed trait, meaning that most people have some morbid curiosity. They might score kind of like an inverted U. If you were to plot, everyone scores on a chart.
Ken, have you taken this quiz?
And I will say that as I took it, I'm not sure if you've ever listened to anyone take it before, Colton.
Yes.
But as I was going through, I was just saying, no, why? With every question. Yeah. So I scored a 1.5.
Wow, that's actually one of the lower scores I think I've seen.
I thought that was very generous, actually. So yeah,
You think you could even be lower than a 1.5? Ken?
probably.
Yeah. You know, Ken, it's so interesting to me that you study sensation seeking when you, it seems like, are sort of low sensation seeking. Is that right?
Yeah, very low. Yeah, I'm a pretty low on the scale compared to most people. In fact, I'm an 8 out of 40 on the scale.
Ken, on your quiz, which we'll also have at sciencefriday.com/morbid, I was like a 37.
Wow, that's pretty high.
Yes, very high. It's out of 40. So I was very high on that and very low on yours, Colton. So it makes me wonder if these are separate, you know, that there's overlap probably, but
Yeah.
these are maybe separate traits.
Well, let me ask you. I mean, do you like horror movies, or do you enjoy anything like that?
I don't really. I
Yeah.
don't really.
So
Yeah.
high in sensation seeking, but don't necessarily enjoy horror movies. And that, again, 5 years ago, people would have thought, well, horror's crazy. Everybody who loves horror is high in sensation seeking, and those people who are high in sensation must love horror. And again, that was one of those things that I thought, that just doesn't seem right. Anecdotally, I knew a lot of people who were not sensation seekers at all and loved horror. And of course, I knew many people who were high sensation seekers and hated horror. And so I thought, okay, this is an interesting thing to study as well. And so I went to the highest sensation seeking horror experience I could think of, which would be a haunted attraction during Halloween, right? A very immersive horror experience. So if horror fans are really sensation seekers, this is where you see it, right? You'd see it at a haunted house. And I had devised this scale that pulled a lot from work that Ken does with some horror fans, scared horror fans, or horror fans use horror as a way to overcome difficult emotions. So the first group, we called them adrenaline junkies. The second group, the fearful ones, we called them white knucklers because they walked through with their fists clenched right as they were going through the haunted house. And the third group, who used horror to cope, we called them the dark copers. And what we found was that a huge portion of people at this haunted attraction were not categorized as adrenaline junkies. Some of them were, but many people said, no, I didn't actually enjoy the fear itself, but I did like the opportunity to overcome my fear.
Interesting.
And so they were very afraid. And so this was a great opportunity for them to safely experience fear and then kind of have a chance to overcome that. And it was the overcoming of that challenge, of that fear, that they really liked. And then, of course, the dark copers felt that the experience helped them kind of understand their own fears and anxieties a bit better.
As someone dressed in a zombie costume chased them with a chainsaw.
Yeah.
And that doesn't surprise me at all. There's a huge aspect of emotional regulation that really flows throughout a lot of high sensation seeking individuals. The ability to be able to practice really controlling their emotions and using those for good things. So, for example, a slackliner that I interviewed called Slackline Girl.
And a slackliner is, just give us
Yeah, so a slackline is a sort of woven narrow band about the width of a credit card that you can balance on. And Slackline Girl is one of the few people who can do it in high heels as well.
amazing.
And so part of what she talks about is the ability to be able to do that is really around her ability to control her emotional reaction while she's trying to focus and balance. And so you see the same things in horror kinds of experiences like haunted houses, where really you're fighting against your own emotional reaction.
Yeah, I wonder if that is something that is maybe somewhat universal among humans, that desire to kind of control, emotions that make you feel like you're out of control. And then in high sensation seekers, horror movies, for example, are just not enough for them. It doesn't actually get them to the point. And so they go to more high adrenaline activities like slacklining, 100 feet in the air, or skydiving or bungee jumping. Whereas people who are a little bit more low in sensation seeking, maybe a horror movie is enough to get them to that point.
We have to take a quick break, but don't go away, because when we come back, what's up with our love of zombies?
Zombies, I think, tap into all 4 domains of morbid curiosity. So those domains are minds of dangerous people, violence, bodily injuries, and the paranormal.
Stay with us. Colton, this one's for you.
These things ain't sick. They're not people. They're dead. Ain't got to feed them nothing for them, 'cause all they do, they kill. These things right here, they're the things that killed Amy. They killed Otis. They got to kill all of us unless we do that. Hey, Herschel, man, let me ask you something. Is a living, breathing person, did they walk away from this?
I heard from your laugh. I assume you clocked it. This is from
Yeah.
Walking Dead.
Season 2, I even know what episode that is.
Okay, true expert on the line. Why are we fascinated by zombies in particular?
Yeah, zombies are kind of interesting because zombies, I think, tap into all 4 domains of morbid curiosity. So those domains are minds of dangerous people, violence, bodily injuries, and the paranormal. So zombies certainly tap into violence, as we heard from that clip. You probably don't need a visual to know that that was a violent scene, right? And zombies obviously commit lots of violence. They also, though, are kind of people, right? And you heard that in that scene too. That character kept saying that they're not people, right? These aren't people anymore. Some of the other people in that scene thought that the zombies were still people, or there might still be a person kind of behind the eyes. And they, of course, tap into bodily injuries because they are walking bodily injuries. Their flesh is falling off and their body parts are, only barely hanging on thread. And they, of course, cause bodily injuries. And because they are both living and dead, they do kind of violate our intuition about how things can exist. And so they are kind of a paranormal entity as well. And so they capture a broad audience, right? Whether you're interested in the paranormal or bodily injuries or violence or minds of dangerous people, there's something about zombies that can tap into each of those.
They tick every box.
They tick every box, yeah, and that's why they tend to be the most popular general audience type of horror, right? I mean, The Walking Dead had at its height something like 15 or 16 million viewers a season.
Colton, are there benefits of being scared? Not for like the survival of a species, not in terms of evolutionary time, but just for the individual personally?
Yeah, maybe. It seems like there can be. Experiencing scary things in a safe or playful setting is a really good way to practice emotion regulation skills. I would say that's the primary benefit that you can get from it. And in fact, one lab in the Netherlands has developed a scary game essentially for kids with anxiety. The player wears an EEG headband that measures brain waves associated with relaxation, and as the player moves through the game, if they get too afraid, the EEG headband will pick that up and a pause screen will pop up and kind of remind them like, hey, this is just a game, you can overcome this, here are some tips. And when the player begins to calm down, they get more powerful in the game and they're able to defeat the monsters more easily. So there's some reinforcement there of if you can face your fear and overcome it, you'll be stronger in the end. And what they found in repeated studies is that playing this scary game, is as effective as cognitive behavioral therapy for treating anxiety in kids, which is incredible.
As we celebrate spooky season,
I would say just keep in mind that it's okay to be morbidly curious. It's okay to indulge during Halloween.
And for the low sensation seekers out there, I'll say it's okay to be frightened of things. And for the high sensation seekers, just try not to scare your friends too much.
thank you both for joining me today.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Groceries that over-deliver, so you can overshare your preferences. Want russet potatoes with no brown spots? You got it. Want Johnson? Okay. A bit DMI, but we're here for it. So download the app today and get $0 delivery fees on your first 3 orders. Instacart. Groceries that over-deliver. Service fees, exclusions, and terms apply.
Did you know the number of heart attacks increased right after daylight saving changes?
Having to wake up in the dark is not only uncomfortable, it's actually really bad for your health long term.
So today, we're looking at the signs of springing forward and falling back and asking, should we get rid of these clock changes once and for all? And if so, what's better for us? Permanent daylight. Because when it comes to the switches, there's a lot of
daylight savings time needs to die.
But then there's science. Science versus daylight saving time is coming up after the break.
At Desjardins, we speak business. We speak equipment modernization. We're fluent in data digitization and expansion into foreign markets. And we can talk all day about streamlining manufacturing processes. Because at Desjardins Business, so join the more than 400,000 Canadian entrepreneurs who already count us and contact Desjardins today. We'd love to talk business.
We know you love the thought of a vacation to Europe, but this time, why not look a little further to Dubai, a city that everyone talks about and has absolutely everything you could want from a vacation destination. From world-class hotels, record-breaking skyscrapers, and epic desert adventures, to museums that showcase the future, not just the past. Choose from 14 flights per week between Canada and Dubai. Book on Emirates.ca today.
Welcome back. Today on the show, daylight saving time. Is it bad for us and should we get rid of it? I'll be discussing the science today with senior producer Meryl Horn. Hey Meryl.
Hey Michelle.
Are you ready for the fall switch?
Not at all. I hate daylight savings time.
What part do you hate?
Mostly because I have 2 small kids. It's like you spend all this time trying to make their bedtimes go well and get them up for school at a certain time, and then it's like you suddenly remember, oh crap, like everything has to happen differently tonight, and either try to keep them up late or try to put them down early, which never works, and it's just a mess for that first few days.
You don't think you get that extra hour of sleep in the fall switch? So Meryl, why do you think we have daylight saving time in the first place?
I mean, I've heard it's because of the farmers, something to do with the farmers.
So I also heard that before. Interestingly, it has nothing to do with and it's back during the World War I years.
Wait, so it's only been around since World War I?
Yeah, it was conceptualized before that, but the first country to widely adopt it was Germany as a way to save fuel during wartime efforts.
Why would that save fuel?
If you can extend the day and the sunlight, you can then save costs on working into the night. Light and energy.
Okay.
Other countries in Europe then picked it up, and so did the US, which finalized the national schedule for it in the 60s.
Okay.
But the kind of funny thing is that these days, daylight saving time doesn't save that much energy.
Oh.
So one report from 2008 found that we save 0.5% of electricity per day of what otherwise would have been used.
Oh.
And other studies find it doesn't save energy at all,
once we realized that the fuel thing didn't make sense, why did we keep it? Is it just kind of tradition?
Yeah, so there's been some other big arguments to keep it. One was the economy, like this idea that if there's more light out in the evening, that people are more likely to go shopping, do their errands.
Oh, that kind of makes sense. Like stores are open later in the summer in a neighborhood.
Yeah, and interesting, like retail, golf, and sporting goods industries have all been big advocates for daylight saving time, as well as Halloween candy makers. Like they really wanted daylight saving time to go over like trick-or-treating hours, you know?
So that people would be triggered in the light when it's like they can get more hours out of trick-or-treating.
Yeah.
Does it actually help the economy?
So there's some reasons for daylight saving time don't make sense. Let's find out if we should just get rid of it. Like, is daylight saving time actively causing harm to us? And I want to start with where we're now in the US about to fall back. So meet Laura Prue. She's a scientist at the University of Washington, and like you, she finds the fall switch pretty annoying.
Especially in Seattle when it's dark and rainy at that time of year anyway. Having it start to get dark at like 3:30 is really tough. You know, at the end of your work day, you leave work and oh my God, it's dark out already.
Yeah, it's so depressing. Yeah, I know. Like Saturday, we were just working for 8 hours, but and a big part of our evening is our commutes home, you know, going to the grocery store, getting to school activities, meeting friends. So traffic volume is definitely busier in the evening than in the morning. And this is where daylight saving time really intersects with Laura's work, because she is a wildlife ecologist, but one of the species that she studies is deer.
Oh.
You know, there are tons of deer across the entire US, and sure, they're cute, but they can also be kind of a big problem for us because we're always out there hitting them with our cars.
Yeah, I think this is not going to end well for the deer, like for everybody, if there's an accident with one. So it does freak me out.
Yeah. In the US, we hit a ton of deer with our cars, more than 2 million a year.
Whoa.
And that's just like what's reported. And most of the time when we hit them, it's dark out, like at dawn or at dusk.
Because that's when the deer are like out and about.
Yeah, there's actually a word for when animals are on this kind of schedule. Here's Laura.
It's one of my favorite terms. It's called crepuscular.
Crepuscular?
I really like that. Crepuscular, yes.
That is a nice word. Crepuscular.
I can't say it. Crepuscular.
And
I think I'm still saying it wrong.
Okay, and that literally means that you're more active when it's dawn and dusk?
Yes, and so like these are the times when it's darker out, it's harder to see them, and those accidents can be really bad. Not just deer, but the people involved too. Like every year in those accidents, almost 60,000 people get hurt.
Whoa.
And more than 400 people die. You know, fun fact, maybe not a nice fact, but this is the mammal in the US that's for the most human deaths.
What is deer? That's a fun fact. I'm sorry. So it's actually a really big problem. It's like if there was another animal that was killing that many humans, we would be like up in arms about this.
And so to connect this back to daylight saving time, when it gets darker earlier, that means a lot of us are commuting when it's darker as well. And in the fall, there's this other thing that's happening for the deer. They are actually busy getting it on.
Oh, so the rut is their mating season, and they are just jacked up on hormones. The males, the bucks, are just running around looking for females, and they're not paying as much attention. They're moving a lot more.
Oh no, so they're like even more active when the change is happening.
Yeah, Laura said that some studies find that deer are moving up to 50% more this time of year. And Laura was like, with all of that going on and adding the fact that it's getting darker earlier, is that causing us to hit more deer? So she and her team decided to look into this, and they started scraping national and state databases on car collision reports.
So we ended up collecting records of over 1 million deer vehicle collisions across 23 states.
Laura and her team want to know like the time, the date, and the location of these accidents to see like how the number of collisions change the week after daylight saving time ends.
Okay.
So here's Laura.
Suddenly now the evening rush hour is more in the dark, when it's much harder for us to see the deer, and that really causes the collision rates to spike. What we found was that switch in the fall led to a 16% increase in collisions, just comparing the week before the switch to the week after.
Oof. Okay. Well, so there's one reason that we shouldn't be doing this, because that means theoretically then more people are also dying if there's more accidents overall.
Yeah, Laura and her team were thinking, they were like, what would happen if we just got rid of the switch?
Yeah.
What if we did daylight saving time all year round, so we had more light in the evening all year round? Like, how many more deer collisions would that prevent? So they did a bunch of math on that and estimated that having permanent daylight saving time could prevent over 36,000 deer car accidents a year across the US.
Whoa.
And she calculated that would mean 2,000 fewer injuries and 33 fewer deaths.
What? Yeah, I was surprised because, yeah, I thought it would just be a kind of maybe a little blip, but we found it was a pretty substantial effect.
That's huge. That's like, I mean, for those people that would obviously make a huge difference. That's pretty strong evidence. I feel like we should just keep daylight savings time.
They also found that if we had permanent daylight saving time, that it would save us $1.2 billion from those accidents.
Oh.
But total costs of medical bills and repairs. And it's not just about the deer here in the US. In case you were wondering, the same thing is true in Australia for koalas.
Oh no, the koalas get hit by cars.
There were some researchers from Queensland, Australia, that found that fewer koalas would get whacked if they went to permanent daylight saving time.
Wow, okay. Though, I mean, I hate to sound like this. I'm skeptical that like hitting a koala would kill as many people as hitting a deer. Sad to think about, but it seems like they just kind of squish under your car.
Oh, yeah, I know. And another big argument is that less crime happens when it's lighter out in the evening. Like, there was one study that found that in the US, robberies decreased during daylight saving time. In the evening hours, robberies went down by 27% when you compare daylight saving time to standard time.
Oh, that makes sense, yeah.
Bottom line for Laura, though, is that we should just really get rid of the switch. And she's a proponent for moving to permanent daylight saving time all year round.
Like, there's just, in my opinion, a lot more costs to switching human lives and thousands of injuries.
Okay, so that's some of the big players in team daylight saving time all the time. Less accidents with deer and less crime. What do you think overall? Are you currently convinced that we should stay on daylight saving time all year?
I feel like we should. That's what I would pick. I'm more of a night person than a morning person. I'd rather have the sunlight after work. And I hate that the switching itself is such a pain. I don't see why we don't just do it all year round now. Let's do it.
I've only told you part of the science here. There's a whole other field of scientists that say we should have standard time all year instead.
What? Why? Why would anybody want the darkness all year round?
We're going to get into that after the break. Welcome back. I'm Michelle Dang, and today we're telling you about the effects of changing our clocks twice a year, here with Meryl Horn. So let's talk about another piece of this debate, the idea that switches are bad for our health and that we should be